from the Catholic Underground.
This episode, the Holy Eucharist, who it is, what it isn't, and why it matters. The Catholic Underground starts right now! Oh yes, my friends, you have hit the play button on the Catholic Underground. We are the podcast cutting through the noise and bringing you the topics that matter. It's episode number 450 for those of you who are keeping score. I'm Father Chris Decker, a priest of the Diocese of Baton Rouge, and joining me, by all odds, it's Kathleen Lee.
I am here.
She is totally here. Olivia Galino also here.
It's true.
From all points in between and now here in the studio again.
Yes, in the flesh.
Glad to have you. Glad to have you back.
Yay.
Yeah, she's been on assignment for quite a while here. And if we go up to space, Jeff Blackwell is very much manually riding the board with effortless precision, effort-filled precision. It's Jeff.
You had it right the first time.
That's right.
Good to be here, Father.
Yeah, he makes it look so easy. And then Ed Ball in the Jeff Star 2.5, I guess.
There you go.
Yeah, next door. Running the video for us. And for those of you who have been joining us on the stream, it has been a very interesting discussion in the chat rooms, as well as some technical issues for us to get on the air. But let me tell you, the reason that I think we had so much trouble actually going out live was because we're talking about something very important, right?
Absolutely.
And that would be the source and summit of our faith, the Eucharist. As I said at the top, who it is, what it isn't, and why it matters. Yeah. And so we thought we would just kind of jump right in and start talking about why the Eucharist is important and where it comes from, where the notion of it comes from. And it's not just something that we made up because we had nothing better to do during the Dark Ages, but no, the Eucharist actually comes to us from himself, the Eucharist himself, Jesus Christ. And so we jump into John's Gospel, I think, is probably the most famous way to begin. Yeah. Before we even really treat the Last Supper discourse, right? Yeah. The bread of life discourse is really where this gets unpacked for us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you ever, like, it's funny how we as Catholics, we look at all these documents, we listen to all these saints, which are great, you know, all these leaders in our church, which are beautiful examples. But oftentimes we're like, we totally forget the idea that Jesus said it himself.
Right.
You know, that if you go back to what Jesus said, he lays it out there. You know, like, well, this, you know, encyclical says blah, blah, and it's like, that's great. Mm-hmm. But if none of that goes back to the source, you know, of what it is that we are doing, what it is that we are partaking in, who it is that we are receiving, then what are we doing? You know, so this is a reminder just for everybody when you're, you know, we talk about this all the time on the show. There are so many sources out there that tell us all kinds of things, and if we are not aware, we can be convinced of things that we quote unquote believe that aren't really true.
And then the Eucharist,
go back to the Scripture.
Then the Eucharist just becomes another what is it, another thing rather than the person Jesus Christ veiled under a sacrament. Yeah. And it's really interesting in John chapter 6 that before Jesus begins to tell us about the bread of life, he multiplies the loaves and the fishes. So as John chapter 6 opens up, he is feeding the people with more than 6 months' wages. You know, he's like, the people are hungry. We don't have enough money to get bread for them. We want to dismiss them to go get something themselves. Right. And so Jesus says, all right, well, have everybody sit down. And then he takes the loaves and the fish and he gives thanks and he breaks it. It's passed around and it's miraculously multiplied. That is a different instance than when Jesus says that he is the bread of life. So after they have eaten, you know, to their fill and there are baskets left over, right? There are 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. There are 12 baskets that are left over. And of course, we know that the 12 baskets is itself a numerological number that speaks of the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 apostles that are going to represent those tribes, and then what Jesus is going to do by means of this symbol, of this multiplication of feeding people to the point where they're, you know, up to their neck and being full. You know, they have been satisfied abundantly. Then Jesus begins to go into the notion of what it is to receive bread from heaven.
Well, and actually it's interesting because before he gets into the bread of life discourse, he actually walks on water.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like when, I love this account that John gives, like the disciples are in the boat alone and Jesus is not with them. And it says that they're like 3 or 4 miles like into the Sea of Galilee. Mm-hmm. And then Jesus is walking on water and he's like, I think it says like he means to pass them by or something. Yeah. It's like, well, where was he going? But anyway, but it's when he says like, ego e me, it is I, right? He uses the divine name. It's like him saying like Yahweh, right? Mm-hmm. Do not be afraid. And so you add all of that together, the multiplication of the loaves and the fish, even the baskets, right? The 12, they're not just like 12 of anything. They're 12 baskets. The walking on water. Yeah. A miracle involving water. And all of that is a reminder of Moses, right? And it's a representation of the miracles involving Moses. And the reminder to, or the reality that Jesus is this new Moses, right? He's going to not only provide for them, but be the new bread from heaven, right? He's going to provide for them a way through and out of their current slavery. But now this slavery is not a physical bondage, it's a bondage in sin, right? And he is not only going to lead them into like just a new physical place, right? But into the promised land, into the heavenly reality. Yep. But it's going to happen through eating a different kind of food, right? And they have to come to grips with that because like you're going to see in the Bread of Life discourse, they're totally on board with the fact that he's the new Moses. They're like, yeah, we're with you.
They get that.
Yeah. They're like, they have no
Which is
problems
also
with that.
why they know at some point they're going to be fed.
Yeah.
And so quite possibly they think that the feeding with the manna is, or the feeding of the 5,000 is that feeding.
Yeah.
You know, because, well, we're out here in the middle of the grassland, right? And he's fed us. And so full on Moses, he is totally Moses.
But the reason they think that it's going to keep happening is because it happened every day in the desert for 40 years. And so they're like, okay, so tomorrow, same time?
That's right.
Right? Quail in the evening, what's up?
That's right.
Right? But Jesus has to kind of redirect their attention and say, no, this is, I am the bread of life.
And so that's what he does. Jesus says, and it really kind of hits me now that as I'm seeing, he goes, very truly, I tell you, you're looking for me, not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves. Do not work for food that perishes, but for food that endures for eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. No. Because I think that's exactly what they're doing. They're like, okay, so loaves yesterday, loaves tomorrow, loaves today. You know? It says that they want more than a sign. And he's like, okay, well, then you're going to get more than a sign. You'll get the food that endures for eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. And of course, then they say, well, yeah, what do we got to do? What do we got to do? And then that's when Jesus kind of begins to turn a different direction than what they're expecting. Yeah. They're expecting just him to make it rain manna. They're expecting another multiplication event. But he says, very truly, I tell you, it was not Moses who gave you the bread from heaven. It is my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is that which comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. And they said, Sir, give us this bread always. And then Jesus doesn't say, well, here it is in my basket. You know, right. He says, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. But I said to you that you have seen me and yet do not believe. Everything the Father gives me will come to me, and anyone who comes to me I will never drive away. For I have come down from heaven not to do my own will, but the will of him who sent me. And Jesus then goes on to say that this is the will of God the Father, is that Jesus doesn't lose anybody. And he says, this is the will of my Father, that all who see the Son and believe in him may have eternal life, and I will raise them up on the last day. And so then the Jews begin to complain.
Which, I mean,
classic.
Yeah.
Jesus drops the bomb on them, and they're like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I have something to say about this.
Exactly. How are you the bread of life, right? Is this not Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How can he say, I have come down from heaven? It's not so much that he's saying that he's the bread of life, but also that he has come down from heaven.
Right.
They kind of skirt the real heart of his teaching.
Yeah.
And they go for what they already know to be familiar about him. They like Jesus, son of Joseph. We know his father and his mother. We're not really comfortable with the bread of life thing yet, and that he is the bread of life. So we'll go with what we know, and that's a very human thing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jesus, one of the things I love about our Lord is that he typically, the reason he says amen twice, he always doubles down whenever God is speaking, and there should be no confusion about what is being said. You know, that he'll say, "Amen, amen, I say to you," or "Very truly, verily, I say to you." And so he speaks very clearly to them after they're trying to figure out who he is. Like we know his parents, we know his parentage, we know where he came from. He says, "Very truly, I tell you, whoever believes has eternal life. I am the bread of life. Your ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness, and they died. This is the bread that comes down from heaven, so that one may eat of it and not die. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats of this bread will live forever. And the bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh." And that's the clincher. This is where, my brothers and sisters, we get the notion of what the Eucharist will be.
Yeah.
Right? And it is so cataclysmic to the followers of Jesus, especially the Jewish followers of Jesus. He says, "How can this man give us his flesh to eat?" And he says, "Very truly I tell you, amen, amen, I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Those who eat my flesh and drink my blood have eternal life, and I will raise them up on the last day. For my flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. Those who eat my flesh and drink my blood abide in me, and I in them. Just as the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so whoever eats me will live because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven, not like which your ancestors ate and they died, but the one who eats this bread will live forever." Jesus said this while he was teaching in the synagogue at Capernaum. So he was not saying this, on the grassy field.
Yeah.
He was saying this in the synagogue, in the place of teaching, as a rabbi.
And I love this discourse, and I love what John is doing even in his gospel here, is because Jesus is a teacher.
Yeah.
He's laid the foundations for everything that he's kind of culminating in this bread of life discourse. And he's referring back to it. He's like taking a thread and tying it all together and showing them like, okay, let's piece all of this together. You already have all of the puzzle pieces. Now let's put them together. Yeah. And let's weave this tapestry.
That's right.
Don't you see?
Yep.
And it's not that they don't see. It's that it's hard, right? Because that'll come next, right? Many of his disciples who were listening said, "The saying is hard. Who can accept it?"
Yeah.
It's not that they don't get it.
And the problem is they get it. Yeah, they do get it.
They understand, but it's hard for that to reconcile with what they already know and how they already live.
Yeah.
Right.
But Jesus is a master teacher here. It's brilliant what he's doing.
That's right. And he just continues to drive it home. Like whenever your parents tell you something over and over again in the hopes that you'll get it.
Yeah.
This is what Jesus is doing. He's like, I know you get it. I know it's a hard teaching, and I know that you probably don't understand all the way around it. But if indeed I am the Messiah, if I indeed am who am, then the Son of Man will give you this. Yeah. This is something that he wants you to have. And this is going to be a linchpin of your belief in the Son of Man so that you may have eternal life. Like all of these things are all lined up together, that you can't have eternal life without believing in Jesus. You can't truly believe that Jesus is who he is unless you do what he says, right? Those who eat my flesh and drink my blood have eternal life.
Yeah.
You can't separate any of those things out.
Yeah.
And so the way that Jesus then makes this happen, if you will, is at the Last Supper discourse while they're eating from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 26. It's in Matthew and in Luke. And does Mark have it doesn't. One of them doesn't have a complete Last Supper discourse. John certainly doesn't. But I don't know. Mark 14, I believe, does, right? Yeah, it's Mark 14. They all do. Sorry, that's my Catholic Bible brain not kicking in. But in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 26, while they were eating, Jesus took bread, said the blessing, broke it, and gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take and eat. This is my body." Then he took a cup, gave thanks, and gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which will be shed on behalf of many for the forgiveness of sins." Jesus is making it very clear that the connection between this teaching that he is the bread of life, he will give his flesh and his blood for the life of the world. You must eat the flesh and drink the blood of the Son of Man if you wish to have eternal life. This is how he makes it happen. He takes the Passover meal, which they certainly were acquainted with. They were celebrating it every year, and he transforms this Paschal meal into a sacrifice that is himself. It is the unbloody offering here at the Last Supper that then is infused, if you will, with the power of his bloody sacrifice offered on the cross once and for all. And that is how, and as much as we can understand how the Son of God can do these things, this is how he makes this possible for us.
Yeah.
And there's no way to look at this and go, oh, well, this was just symbolic. Oh, well, he couldn't have meant that.
Yeah.
That's exactly what the Jewish disciples of Jesus were saying. He couldn't have meant this. And they left. Many left.
Yeah.
And so he turns to the 12, the ones who are represented by the baskets, and he says, "What about you? Are you also going to leave?" And I tell you, Peter speaks to my heart, because I know as a priest so many times I go, "Well, Lord, where else am I going to go?
Yeah.
You have the words of eternal life. If you said it, then not only would I do well to believe it, but I must believe it because I desire eternal life. If this is all there is, then ugh. But if you're telling me that the way to have eternal life, not just simply to lie in death and in my own misery, is to receive you in the way that you're telling me you're going to do it, I'll do it."
Yeah.
You know, and so even though they run at the scandal of the cross, they reconstitute themselves and they do exactly what he has commissioned them to do, what he has ordained them to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think what's beautiful is, kind of going back to the difficulty of the teaching. It's difficult because it requires the Jews to sort of shift the way that they had been thinking about some of their dietary laws. Like going back to Leviticus, they were prohibited from eating things that had blood in them because they believed that the life of something was in the blood. So if you ate the blood of, a pig, then you had that animal's life in you, and that would make you unclean, ritually speaking. And so, like even just forgetting the fact that like Jesus is asking them to eat his blood, which is, has a whole other set of issues.
Yeah.
The blood is an issue, right, for them. But that's exactly the point here, is that like
knowing full well the belief that you all have about the dietary laws.
You need my life.
In this case, the life is certainly in my blood.
Yeah.
And he knew that, they knew it.
Yeah.
And so that's what we celebrate whenever we go to the sacrifice of the Mass. The Mass is not simply a banquet meal like you would go to a wedding reception.
Yeah.
Although there is an element of wedding banquet to what we're doing. We're eating and drinking.
Yeah.
But most importantly, that there is a sacrificial nature. It is a sacrifice that we are going to when we go to Mass.
Yeah.
And that gets lost, and certainly in our modern interpretation of liturgy so many times, especially, in the world in which we live today, because everything kind of reads as stagecraft. If we're not careful, everything reads as stagecraft because we have become a culture that is so kind of indoctrinated by the entertainment culture. But what the priest is doing is he is going up to offer sacrifice, just as those first apostles did. And the banquet part is that we go to the altar and we receive the Lord himself. Yeah. Right? But it is no less a sacrifice. So we say that just to kind of give a sense of where the Eucharist comes from. It comes from Jesus himself. He says it very clearly, and we are bound as Christians to believe it. In fact, the Catechism says that the Eucharist is the source and the summit of Christian life. The other sacraments and all ministries and works of the apostolate are bound up with the Eucharist and oriented towards it. We would often say that they are sacramental, right? They point towards the Eucharist. All of the power that Mother Church has comes from Jesus Christ present in the Eucharist. That is the electric dynamo, if you will, that is the never-ending source of the true power that the church has. I often ask my parishioners, say, well, what's the most expensive thing in the church? They'll go, well, the tabernacle, that's probably a precious metal. What about the chalice? In the parish that I'll be going to in New Roads, Louisiana, you can Google it, St. Mary's, we have a chalice from the 16th century. And so surely they must think, well, this has got to be, no, the most expensive and priceless thing that we have is contained in that little white host. It's Jesus Christ, the infinite one who makes himself finite, so that we can consume him and that we might have life, that we can become those spiritual dynamos.
Yeah.
And that's what the Catechism is getting at. The Eucharist is an efficacious sign. So it is a sign that signifies what you're looking at, right?
Yeah.
It affects what it signifies, and it is the cause of that communion in the divine life and that unity of the people of God by which the church is kept in being. So without the Eucharist, we cease to be the church. Without the Eucharist, the Catholic Church does not exist. So think about that. Why is the Eucharist under attack today? Why is it being made into a political football? It's because without the Eucharist, the church does not exist. And you know who knows that? Satan knows that. And so it'll stir up all sorts of things. And right now, the political engines are the most. That's the high school gossip that everybody pays attention to.
It's the loudest, yeah.
Exactly. And so, of course, if the Eucharist is the source and summit of our power, as the church, and not power in a sense of like lording it over people, but the source and summit of everything that animates us, of course, is going to be under attack.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you look at the church and the faithful itself, like there's like a 2019 Pew Research report that says only 1/3 of Catholics believe in what the church teaches about the Eucharist.
Yeah.
So 1/3 of people who are baptized Catholic, are on board. 2/3 are not.
Are fine with thinking of it as a symbol.
Right.
At its best.
Yeah.
Right.
And
so even
optional at its worst.
Yeah. So
right?
even when the faithful aren't, for a myriad of reasons, they aren't catechized well. They just, stray away from that belief, and their own personal beliefs overtake that, that teaching of the church for whatever reason. When the church isn't strong in the faithful, right, and the faithful and the people who make up the church aren't strong in their belief, well then, shoot, like I said earlier, it's easier, like we can be told and taught things about our own faith that aren't actually true.
Yeah.
And we can believe, really? That's Jesus?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're right. It is kind of just, it doesn't taste like Jesus. I don't know what, I guess not. Like, that's kind of a strange thing. But like, man, like that is where I think, a lot of this turmoil, right, is rooted in the faithful and our unbelief, our doubt, our,
And so we have to go back to Jesus in the bread of life discourse. The part that doesn't always get spoken of is John 6 verse 60. When many of his disciples heard it, they said, "This teaching is difficult. Who can accept it?" But Jesus, being aware that his disciples were complaining about it, said to them, "Does this offend you? Then what if you were to see the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? It is the Spirit that gives life. The flesh is useless." And he's not talking about his flesh, because this is one of those points of contention.
Yeah.
He's talking about if you're just kind of believing what's there in front of you, and not that the Spirit of God can give life however he wishes, including through the bread and wine that are going to become my flesh and blood, then you're not getting the picture. He says, "But among you there are some who do not believe, for Jesus knew from the first who were the ones who did not believe, and who was the one who would betray him. And he said, 'For this reason I have told you that no one can come to me unless it is granted by the Father.'" John 6, verse 66. Because of this, many of his disciples turned back and no longer went about with him. Like that's exactly where we find ourselves today.
Yeah.
And I often quote Flannery O'Connor, the great Southern writer, whenever someone at a dinner party says, "I love you Catholics and your Eucharist. What a beautiful symbol." He says, if it's just a symbol, then to hell with it.
Yeah.
But if indeed it is the body and blood, soul and divinity of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, then I don't presume myself worthy to receive it. In fact, I know that I'm not.
Yeah.
And I don't deserve it. I'm not entitled to the Eucharist.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing in me that has any inkling whatsoever to say, gimme.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm called to do when I come to the Eucharist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's Benedict who he writes a beautiful book on it's called God is Near Us, on like Eucharistic theology. But in it, he talks about how like when you encounter Jesus in the Eucharist, there is no way, like ontologically, there is no way to encounter Jesus in the Eucharist and be unchanged.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you are whether you understand it, believe it, accept it or not, you are encountering the God of the universe.
That's right. The one that made you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in love, you're encountering him, even if you can't receive that love, don't accept it, whatever. And so there's no way to leave that encounter unchanged.
That's correct. Which is, of course, why we can adore the Blessed Sacrament and we can receive graces from it, right?
Yeah.
Every time we look at the Blessed Sacrament, then the Lord wishes to impart grace. In a sense, kind of a mini proto-communion within us, you know, that look of love, that we think that we're looking at the Eucharist, but he's looking back at us. And that, my brothers and sisters in Christ, is exactly what all this is about, which is why we're on the air here saying that the Eucharist is not just, it's not a symbol, it is Jesus himself. And as such, if it is the God who made us, if it is the God of the universe, if it is the one who makes himself, and I love this phrase from St. John the 23rd, the prisoner of love, right? He makes himself so that we can receive him in a physical form, though veiled by a sacrament, then we have to jettison everything that now all of the media pundits are speaking about, because many of them do not believe that the Eucharist is anything other than a token, right? And therefore can be dismissed, or everyone's entitled. The Eucharist is not that. The Eucharist is Jesus Christ. And if it is Jesus Christ, then we must beg to come into the presence of the Lord. Well, we hope you don't have to do too much begging for the other part of the Catholic Underground. We'll be right back, so stay right where you are. Hail, Holy Queen, Mother of Mercy, our life, our sweetness, and our hope. To thee do we cry, poor banished children of Eve. To thee do we send up our sighs, mourning and weeping in this valley of tears. Turn then, most gracious Advocate, thine eyes of mercy towards us, and after this our exile, show unto us the blessed fruit of thy womb, Jesus. O clement, O loving, O sweet Virgin Mary. Alrighty, you have found the Catholic Underground, and we're glad to be with you. I'm Father Chris Decker, joined by Kathleen Lee, Olivia Galino. I almost forgot your last name there, but I got your first name right.
Kevin.
That's my name.
Up in space, we got Jeff Blackwell, and then Ed is also running the video for us. And
In the pit.
that's right, in the pit. By hook or by crook, we're here.
Yep, that is true.
We are. It was a lot to get us here, but we are here with you, and we're glad that we are. We've been talking about the Eucharist, and certainly who the Eucharist is and what it isn't, right? It's not just a token, it's not just a symbol, it's not just a sign, but it is the person Jesus Christ who gives us freely of himself. And of course, we know that through Jesus' own words, the Eucharist comes about. We know through his saving action on the cross, we are able to receive the merits of that sacrifice. We're able to receive all the graces of that sacrifice. Anytime you walk into a church, oftentimes it is said that, oh, well, you Catholics, you sacrifice Jesus over and over and over again. Well, no, no. Because the liturgy is entering into the moment, right? We're entering into the moment of Calvary. Jesus, because he is Lord of time, that one sacrifice shed once and for all for the forgiveness of sins, the power from that moment, the saving action from that moment is then imparted to us here in time, right? So it's not just a historical recreation. It's not like, a war recreation that you would do on a field somewhere.
Right,
no,
yeah.
This is us actually at Calvary with the Blessed Mother, with John the Apostle, with all of the saints who have gone before us. I'm reminded also of Justin Martyr. Justin Martyr, who lived between 153 and 155. So the church was brand new. He says, and this food is called among us Eucharistia, the Eucharist, of which no one is allowed to partake but the man who believes that the things which we teach are true, and who has been washed with the washing that is for the remission of sins and unto regeneration, who is so living as Christ has enjoined. For not as common bread and common drink do we receive these, but in like manner as Jesus Christ our Savior, having been made flesh by the word of God, had both flesh and blood for our salvation, so likewise have we been taught that the food which is blessed by the prayer of his word, and from which our blood and flesh by transmutation are nourished, is the flesh and blood of that Jesus who was made flesh. That was from his first apology to the faith, right? His first explaining of the faith. Yeah. And this is in the first 150 years of the church.
Yeah.
And this comes, of course, too, from right off the heels of St. Paul, who writes, well, I'm Paul. I'm an apostle. I'm not the Messiah. I'm not Hermes. I'm not Zeus, but I am an apostle, and I myself hand on to you what I received. Yeah. That on the night before he died, and he goes through the words of institution, the words of consecration, we call them as well. That I'm not the author of any of this, Paul says, but I'm just simply handing on what I've received. We call that traditio, tradition, the handing down. Yeah,
and that's kind of, I think, a hang-up that some non-Catholics have is, why can't I receive the Eucharist? And it's not you're not in the club, so you don't get to, don't get to be in the don't get to partake because you're not in the club. It's and we'll talk about this as well, even Catholics, like what is our disposition to receive that?
Yeah.
If I would never suppose to go to another faith and partake in some of their practices because I can't appreciate what it is fully that I'm partaking in. I don't necessarily believe what I'm partaking in. So it's not this is one of those instances where I think it's like this, well, everybody gets to have everything that they want. No, it's not. And it's not an exclusion because, of course, as we know, non-Catholics and Catholics who are not ready to receive communion, which we'll talk about again in a minute, but are all welcome to come to the Mass.
Yeah.
But it's, what is it that you are receiving? Mm-hmm. And what is it do you believe about that? Are you in a state that you can fully receive that?
Right.
Well, I think we have to understand too, so you're talking about the Eucharist is the source and summit of the Christian life, and of the sacraments, it's the highest. But the sacraments themselves are an invitation into mysterion, into the inner life of God. Mm-hmm. And we even call the Mass the sacred mysteries. Right? Think about when the priest says that at the beginning of Mass, or think about the sacraments of initiation. What am I being initiated into? The sacred mysteries, right? There is a kind of level of exclusion and inclusion, but not to the point of this is our club, you can't be a part of this, so get out, right? But there's a certain kind of step into this level of mystery, right? We want you here,
absolutely,
right? But there's a process,
correct,
right? And it comes from a deeper knowledge of, a deeper immersion in the communion, right?
Because that's what relationship is really all about. If you knew everything all at once, at one time, about your spouse, some would say, well, that would be very helpful for me. Yeah. But that also wouldn't be the basis of a relationship.
Yeah.
Because the basis of relationship involves a further in. It's going deeper into something that is ultimately quite mysterious. Think about any relationship that you've ever been in. That's truly, it could be just a friendly relationship. There are still things about friends that I do not know, that are very close friends, and perhaps we share a deep level of intimacy, but ultimately that other person is mysterious to me. Mm-hmm. And it is the same way whenever we go to Mass. If a person who is not Catholic comes to Mass, immediately they're struck by the otherness of this. And because they're struck by the otherness, we take St. Paul very much at his word. St. Paul said in 1 Corinthians, right after he talks about how he's handing on what he himself has received, he says, "Whoever therefore eats the bread or drinks the cup of the Lord in an unworthy manner will be answerable for the body and blood of the Lord. Examine yourselves, and only then eat of the bread and drink of the cup. For all who eat and drink without discerning the body eat and drink judgment against themselves." Now, this is not saying, well, you can't come to Holy Communion because you obviously are unworthy. No, not at all. This is
because aren't we all?
Right, all of us are unworthy.
Yeah, exactly.
But what St. Paul is saying here is that we ought to discern and understand the depth of the mystery that we're entering into. And this is why the church in her wisdom has, from the very beginning, had the rite of Christian initiation, where a person can enter into these mysteries little by little, piece by piece, not because they're secret and we don't want anybody to know about them, but because we want people to understand the depth of the relationship with their God that they're entering into.
And I think Fulton Sheen, in his meditations on the last words of Christ in a little pamphlet called Calvary and the Mass, he's got a section on communion that I think really sheds some light on this. It's at the end of that particular section. He says, there can be no ascent to a higher life without death to a lower one. Right? 'Cause when I go to communion, that's what's happening, right? I am communing with the God of the universe who comes to me in love, right? And I have to die to a former self.
Yeah.
Does not an Easter Sunday presuppose a Good Friday? Does not all love imply mutual self-giving, which ends in self-recovery?
Yeah.
This being so, should not the communion rail be a place of exchange instead of a place of exclusive receiving? Is all the life to pass from Christ to us and nothing to go back in return? Are we to drain the chalice and contribute nothing to its filling?
Ooh.
There's a part after that where he talks, I didn't include this on the quote that I used for something, where he talks about being a parasite on the mystical body of Christ.
Oh, wow.
And take that into
the last thing
meditation.
I want to be is a barnacle,
But the point being that it is true communion, and like you're talking about a relationship, it's mutual exchange of love.
That's right.
And so when we go to communion, like Kathleen was saying, I don't go to another church and actively participate in their rites, their rituals, because I don't believe in their practices and in their dogmas and whatever. And so I cannot, with my body, say, yes, I believe in these things,
Correct.
my participation.
Yeah.
So when I go to communion, I have to actively give with my heart, with my actions, with my full self, myself to the Lord. And if I can't do that, then I cannot receive communion.
Right. Then I am not discerning the body.
Right.
And I am not giving freely and completely of myself.
Yeah.
And that comes from understanding as best as we can what Christ himself has taught through the body that he has given, the church, rather than me just kind of sidling into a Catholic worship service, as it is often called, and saying, well, at my church we do this, so therefore I must be able to do it. Well, no, we believe very different things. Oftentimes they're similar, but still very different. And I don't want to put anybody's soul in danger because I'm dispensing the Eucharist to them, which they can't completely return what our Lord is attempting to give. And that, that is very difficult because it involves, in the world today, it involves us saying, well, no, not yet. Not ever. But no, take a moment, take this time of discernment, and truly, if you wish to understand why the church does what she does, then step into that beautiful, deep pool that is the treasury of our faith.
Yeah.
Rather than just trying to kind of say, well, I'm Catholic because I say it today.
Yeah.
Well, no, if we can't profess the creed and mean everything that we say, then there is an impasse where we're not going to be able to give ourselves completely in relationship as well. So one of the things that we can talk about perhaps is receiving the Eucharist reverently. It wasn't until 1905, actually, believe it or not, that Pope Pius X, now Pope St. Pius X, who he was the one who advocated the frequent reception of Holy Communion. Of course, the precept of the church is that one only need receive Holy Communion once a year. And in his document, Sacra Tridentina, he gives a little understanding, some historical context for why that became the practice. That's still the precept of the church today, that you're only required to receive the Eucharist once a year.
And that might be like shocking to people.
It's probably very shocking because we oftentimes think, well, if I go to Mass, then, now, be gentle here. If I go to Mass, then I sometimes erroneously believe that the receipt for going to Mass is going to Holy Communion.
Yeah.
And that's just because that's kind of cause and effect how we can become. But that is not what the Eucharist is, right? And that's also not our reason for going.
Right.
Yeah.
We go to empty ourselves completely at the altar. Like I say, bring all your crud and bring all your joys, and you lay them at the foot of the altar as the priest takes the bread and wine on the other side of the rail and brings it into the Holy of Holies and begins to offer it. He's not just offering that bread and wine that your stewardship helped to purchase, but he's also bringing all your crud and all your joys, and he is putting that on the altar as well. And so that is very, very important for us to understand. And if that is indeed the case, then the holy exchange that takes place is I bring all of my crud and my joys to the altar, and the Lord gives me himself. And so Pope Pius X in 1905 quotes the Council of Trent. He says, "The Holy Council wishes indeed that at each Mass the faithful who are present should communicate not only in spiritual desire but sacramentally by the actual reception of the Eucharist." So he's recapitulating what the Council of Trent in the 1500s was hoping would become the norm in the case. And he says there are reasons that this has kind of fallen out of practice. But he says that the practice of frequent and daily communion may be carried out with greater prudence and more fruitful merit. Again, with the confessor's advice, right? So we don't presume to receive the Blessed Sacrament, but we make sure that we're disposed to do so. And so he says, right, frequent and daily communion as a practice, most earnestly desired by Christ our Lord and by the Catholic Church, should be open to all the faithful of whatever rank and condition of life, so that no one who is in the state of grace and who approaches the holy table with a right and devout intention can be prohibited therefrom. Now notice what is being said there, in the state of grace, right? In whatever rank and condition of life, with a right and devout intention. And so this is what we believe as Catholics even today, is that we must be in the state of grace. So if a person who is guilty of a venial sin or multiple venial sins, these are non-serious sins that are spoken of in the Scriptures, then the Eucharist is a healing balm for that.
Yeah.
But if we are guilty of serious sin, if we have violated one of the 10 Commandments, if we have violated one of the precepts of the Church, and we have not gone to sacramental reconciliation, we are bound to go to reconciliation. We are bound to go to the sacrament of penance and reconciliation in order to become ready to receive the sacrament. We would call that the state of grace, which means that I've received the sacramental grace of forgiveness of my mortal sins, and now I am ready to present myself, still unworthy, but I'm ready to present myself to the Lord so that this exchange of persons can take place in the Eucharist. You know, it's kind of like if you think about a friend in a relationship. If I'm holding back forgiveness from my friend, I can still go to the coffee shop with them, but we can't have an exchange of persons. We can't. And it's not, the Lord never withholds forgiveness from us, but we always withhold ourselves from it.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm thinking my brain's about to come out my mouth. So
Go for it.
So, but if we're looking at the state of how the faithful view the sacrament, right? The sacrament of sacraments, the Eucharist, and the lack of belief in what it is, how do we see that trickle down into the other sacraments like confession? Well, I don't really need to go to confession. I could just walk up and get the Eucharist. What does that look like for the sacrament of matrimony?
Right.
I can't really see what goes on in the graces, and so really, is it a what does that look like for the sacrament of holy orders? When we look at what is the source and summit of our faith, what is the piece de resistance of what we are, what makes us who we are, and if we lack faith in that, if we lack belief in that, do we see too how it trickles into
Absolutely.
the rest of our sacraments?
Yeah, if I don't believe in the Eucharist,
Right.
then it means that I really don't believe in the rest of the sacraments.
Right. And you know, when you're talking about the need to go to confession, right? How many people don't go to confession? I don't like it. Well, yeah, nobody likes going
I don't like it until I'm on the other side of it. Yeah.
Nobody likes going to the doctor either,
Yeah.
but at some point if you don't go, you're going to die. Like you need that. You need it.
And that's the thing, is if we do not avail ourselves of the sacraments, then we spiritually die.
Right.
And we're basically just kind of zombies walking around trying to be amoral.
Right.
Yeah.
But the more and more we get away from the sacramental life of the church and everything our God is trying to impart to us,
Right.
the more we just die a little bit more every day.
Right.
And that's really what hell is. Hell is not desiring the gifts of God and saying, I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
I'll just do it myself.
Yeah.
And that's really hell, is everybody walking around saying, no, I'll do it myself.
got it. I
I'll
got
do
it.
it myself.
When the great physician is saying, you make an appointment, come to me, I will give you the medicine, I will feed you, I will heal you. You know, and we're like walking around with our leg falling off going, I got it myself, I got this. We
Super
don't
good.
got nothing, my
That's
friends.
right.
Yeah.
Not a thing.
So,
And
yep.
and I was just going to say, like, which means that sometimes it's going to be incumbent upon me to realize
Right.
I'm not in a place to receive the
and
Eucharist.
I ought not to do so.
And I ought not to go. And it's going to be uncomfy
Yeah.
for me to sit my butt in the pew while everyone else is making their way up through the communion line and not worry about, well, why is she sitting down? Or, if I choose to go up and receive a blessing or something, fine. But like to not worry about the fact that what other people might think,
Yeah.
right? But to remember that it's about the communion,
Yeah.
right? And the fact that what's happening there in the consecration is not really, it's not about me, right? It happens regardless of me, and it happens still for me,
Right.
even though I can't receive it.
Yeah.
And that Jesus loves the fact
That's right.
that I abstain from receiving him when I am not able to.
That's right. And graces can be imparted because of that.
Yeah.
There are people in any number of situations that cannot participate in the Eucharistic life of the church in its fullness and ought not to do so. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that the Lord isn't giving them the graces necessary so that they can amend their lives.
Right.
That's actual grace, which is distinct from sacramental grace.
Yeah.
And so, it's important to note that even if a person is unable to receive Holy Communion, if they're Catholic, they're not excused from the obligation to go to Mass.
Right.
Yeah.
Because Mass, again, is not about us. It's about what we owe to God. We owe God everything. All of our lifeblood we owe to Him.
Yeah.
And part of that is worshiping Him in spirit and in truth in the way that He asks of us. And so what I have also found in my life as a priest is that folks who come to Mass and perhaps aren't able, or they become aware that there's something they have to work through, or they need to go to confession, being arrested with that truth may cause some sorrow, but boy, oh boy, does the Lord use that sorrow to bring us up, right?
Yeah.
It was Peter getting caught in himself
Yeah.
that caused him to sink into the Sea of Galilee, right? And it wasn't until Jesus grasps his hand and helps him up. Oh, Peter, why did you doubt? Oftentimes we can doubt that the Lord wants us if we say, I couldn't possibly go to confession.
Yeah.
I couldn't possibly meet with the priest and see what's going on in my marital situation. Absolutely you can.
Yeah.
Absolutely you can, and you should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's what the church is here for. We're not, Pope Francis has said this, right? It's a field hospital.
Yeah.
It's not a museum for saints. It's a hospital for sinners. And even though you may not be able to receive the Eucharist, you ought not to keep away from the proximity to the Eucharist.
Yeah.
Because every time you're in the proximity of the Eucharist, our Lord, your Creator, He's going to do what he does.
Yeah.
He's going to get graces to you in the way that will call you deeper into communion with him.
Yeah. That's why when I see people, which is not very often, because let's be honest, I am not looking at anybody else during communion. And those of you who are, worry about yourself, okay?
Yeah.
But when I do notice
Kathleen's truth bomb.
right, when I do notice that someone is not going to communion, I don't care whatever reason it is. I want to fist bump them and be like, yes, look at you go, because that takes great love and great courage.
That's right.
And great love to be able to say, I'm here for you, Jesus, and I'm going to get as close as I can. But there's a beautiful saying that where I was told one time that the young people in Ireland, when they're about to receive communion, their first communion, they sing this song, and in the song they say something along the lines of Cade Mille Falte, which means 100,000 welcomes. And so I often think about that when I look at my own self. 100,000 welcomes, Jesus, for you into my heart, into my, as they're going up to communion, they're singing this song. And I'm like, what does my heart look like? And if it's not, if it is not a place to receive the Lord of the universe, then I am not, that's
right.
Thank you, Lord. I will, let me clean it up a little bit, right? And I'm going to come back.
And one of the English translations of the Adoro Te Devote, which is probably my favorite Eucharistic hymn, the English translation is, live more fully in my heart, be my constant guest. Is my heart a constant guest room for the Lord?
Yeah.
And if it's not a suitable guest room, then I need to go, as a priest, I need to go to sacramental reconciliation. And you've heard me say it on the show before, I say it again. I have to go to confession. In fact, I'm overdue.
The Pope goes to confession.
Absolutely. That's exactly right.
Frequently.
So I guess in the brief time that we have left, maybe talk about some of the things that the ordinary Joe and Jane Catholic can do to defend the Eucharist from attack and to kind of get into that worthiness cycle of though I am unworthy, what is it that makes me objectively able to approach the august sacrament of the Eucharist?
Yeah.
So I guess the first thing is go to confession.
Go to confession. Yeah. I mean, oh my gosh. Every church, and we talked about this a million times, every church, provides confession. At some point, you just got to figure out when it is and then get in line.
Yeah.
The internet is usually good for that. We're getting better.
Yeah. And if not, most of the times, if you find a priest and you say, Father, will you hear my confession? I have never done that, and they've been like, no, sorry. I would rather not, give you the No.
If it's 2.5 minutes before Mass, I might say wait.
Maybe, right?
Risky.
But you had, nobody's going to come to you often and say, would you like to receive confession? Do you do that? Are you like a mobile confessor?
There have been a couple of times that I've said you need to go to confession, and the person will go, oh, well, this is what I know who you are. They always say, Father, it's going to take forever. I'm like, oh. That means you're ready. Let's go.
That means you have all the time in the world.
Spoiler alert, it doesn't take long at all.
Yeah.
Because a person who says that has just been waiting for the invitation. So every now and then the spidey sense will, will wake up. But typically I wait for the person to initiate. Father, can I go to confession? And I've never met a priest who says no. Like I said, unless it's 2 minutes before Mass starts.
In which case, find him after Mass.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I find it's helpful because I'm the person who I know I need to go to confession, but I might not think about it until I'm actually at Mass, and I'm like, oh dang it, I need to go to confession. So I've started just putting it in my calendar.
Yeah.
Every month, every 3 weeks, whatever it is, whatever your kind of cycle is for confession, just put it in your calendar. It might seem weird, and maybe that's strange. You're like, what if other people say it? Whatever. Yeah. Whatever works for you. Make an appointment with yourself. Yeah.
Your spiritual life is more important than even your gym schedule.
Yeah.
There, I said it. Go to confession. Take your family to Mass.
Yes.
Young parents, y'all, this is not optional. Take your family to Mass, because let me tell you, fathers especially, the more you make your faith, the practice of your faith, the center of your life, the more your kids are going to understand that it is important. Why? Because you know it's important.
Yeah.
And you're actually, believe it or not, going to have a little bit less of a trouble whenever they hit those teenage years.
Yeah.
Is if you just simply model the behavior. Teenagers are going to be teenagers.
Yep.
But modeling that behavior and then taking the time to learn what the church teaches that drives us to Mass, right, in our heart, that makes all the difference too.
Yeah.
So like I say, you can look up the Baltimore Catechism on the Eucharist and start to learn the questions and answers. The Catechism of the Catholic Church does a really good job about that as well. Catholic Answers, we'll put a link in the show notes, has a great little tract on Christ and the Eucharist. But I'd also go to the source, go to John chapter 6 and read what Jesus tells us about the Eucharist, right?
Yeah.
You can also go to Matthew chapter 26, verses 26 through 30. Read what he says about this is truly his body and blood, flesh and divinity. And then read the account of the crucifixion and see with your own eyes in the pages of Scripture what he has done for you, though we do nothing to deserve it.
Yeah.
And if you do these things and you pour your heart into this the same way that you would pour your heart into a favorite hobby or your morning coffee or even maybe your morning commute, which sometimes gets more heart than going to church on Sunday, then the Lord will always, always minister to you. I'm reminded of the Infant of Prague. The Infant of Prague is this little statue that got lost in a war in Croatia, in Prague. And a monk was sifting through the rubble of the war, and he found this little statue of the infant Jesus, and his hands had been removed. And the little Infant of Prague, the statue, spoke to the priest. And he said very simply, he said, if you have pity on me, then I will have mercy on you. If you console my heart that's suffering, then I will have mercy on you. If you give me hands, then I will give you peace. And the more you honor me, the more I will bless you. And that is true today. The Lord's hands, one of his hands is in blessing, the other hand is upholding the universe.
Yeah.
If we give him hands, if we allow him to have dominion over us, then we will know peace. It's going to be the same in your family. If we allow the Lord to truly take root in us, then that's where it comes about. Yep. And the more we honor him, the more he will bless us.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about, and that's what the Eucharist is about, and that's why it's so important. That's why we're called to him in that way. My goodness. Well, hopefully this was a helpful program for you because, again, there's a lot swirling around.
Yep.
But that's why we, turn on the big old Jeff Star 1 and come to you week in and week out. As always, the Catholic Underground made possible by viewers, listeners, prayer warriors, benefactors like you, huh?
An official undergrounder is what you could be when you grow up and you want to be one. So go ahead.
Yeah.
Just jump online and go to CatholicUnderground.com/donate.
Sure enough.
And you can also help us out by letting others know about us. Remember to like us, heart us, star us on your platform of choice. And if you have a podcasting service you subscribe to or listen to, make sure you leave a review, please. That really does help us out.
It sure does. It sure does. Thank you, Jeff. Our panelists have been Kathleen Lee. She's always there.
I am.
Olivia Galino. She's also an immovable object here in the studio.
Okay.
Jeff Blackwell's our technical director. Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome, Father. Always a pleasure.
Ed Ball is in the video cave, and Jim Hayes is our research assistant with his crew in the lab. And you know me. I'm Father Chris Decker. You can follow me on Twitter at Digital Catholic and Instagram as well. Thanks for listening to the Catholic Underground, cutting through the noise so that you can find that still small voice. He's present in the tabernacle. We, my friends, will see you next time.
From the Catholic Underground.